This is Cradlewise, and it is the smartest crib in the world, or at least it wants to be. It's a sleek crib, it's rising in popularity, but many who are in the market for smart sleep systems are debating between this and the current king of the baby tech world, Snoo, which remains a top pick among parents who want tech-integrated sleep solutions. We'll see how these two stack up against each other, but first let's dive into Cradlewise. Now note that I am based here in the United States. I am unsure if Cradlewise is sold internationally or meets international regulatory standards, so just please bear that in mind. Now, we've been using Cradlewise for nearly 2 months now, and overall it's been pretty good. Not like this otherworldly thing, but it's been a pretty good system. You're basically getting an all-in-one solution with Cradlewise, as it's able to monitor the baby, use white noise, track sleep, and comfort the baby once it senses that he or she is about to wake or is already crying. Now, instead of buying a crib or a bassinet and pairing it with a sound machine and a smart monitor like Miku or Nanit or Owlet, all of which I've already reviewed on this channel, everything is going to be coming included with Cradlewise. Looking at the app's home screen, you're going to be able to find the main feed along with a status prompt at the top and the temperature gauge, which I often find to be pretty inaccurate. In my opinion, while you can see the baby just fine in the app, the camera quality is a little bit too muddy for my liking, and I do wish that it delivered a little bit more of a crisp image, especially at that price point that is being offered at $2,000. Now, under the feed is a button to easily grab a snapshot of your baby, which as parents, we love clogging our camera roll with a bunch of baby pictures. And then to the right of that is where you can toggle the onboard sounds. Under the sound tab is where you'll find expanded sound options where you can toggle the volume and more. The sounds themselves, they're okay, but comparing it to a dedicated sound monitor like the Hatch Rest, it's not the best. Now, I do want to note that I am an iOS user. I've heard that parents who are on Android have experienced a few more hiccups with the app. I'm not completely sure on that, so if you are an Android user and you have some experience here, go ahead and drop a comment for me to know. Going back to the home screen, there's the option to toggle the bounce. Now, this right here is probably the most intriguing feature that's gonna hook a bunch of parents that are out there. Cradlewise is able to sense discomfort and will attempt to help your baby by gently bouncing them up and down. Now, this functions very similarly to what we've seen in the past with the 4Moms bassinet, which gently rocks up and down. Compared to the Snoo, however, that system rocks side to side while the baby is also simultaneously held in place with their built-in Snoo swaddle. So you've got two different approaches here on how these two systems are managing to comfort your baby. Now, like I mentioned before, the bouncing intensity with Cradlewise and the duration of it, that can all be toggled inside the app, or it can be shut off altogether. Now, generally speaking, you'll probably stop using this feature somewhere around the 5-month mark, and Snoo as well, that's something that you're gonna be phasing out around 5-6 months at the most. Now, the bouncing itself on Cradlewise, it's very gentle, smooth, and it's surprisingly quiet too, almost to the point where you can't really hear anything. So, kudos to the team for designing it like that and building it out that way. It does a good job at reacting quickly and also sometimes preemptively at bouncing gently to start comforting the baby right off the bat. Now, the biggest question that you're probably gonna have here is, which one works better, Snoo or Cradlewise, right? The bouncing of the Cradlewise or the side-to-side motion of Snoo, which there's been so much documentation on that with Dr. Harvey Karp and all that. I'm not gonna be able to definitively answer that for you because every baby is gonna react very differently to how each system is gonna go about soothing. But that said, a majority of parents have reported success with both systems. Many that I've heard from even claim that it was, like life-changing, particularly with Snoo, simply because it has a longer track record. Now, in our personal experience, the bouncing motion with Cradlewise has seemingly worked pretty well at comforting our baby back to sleep, but just like swings, you never know if your baby will really like it or if it's a waste of money because it's not something that works the way you initially anticipated. So that's when you're gonna wanna do the 100-night test to see if it's even something that actually works for you, to see if it's something that you wanna keep, We'll circle back to this at the end of the video, but I want to quickly touch on one final part of the app, and that's going to be the sleep logs, which you can find under the activity tab. Now here, you're going to be able to get a picture of how the baby slept every 24 hours. I personally like the way that they have this laid out, and I think it's pretty easy to understand. It gives you a good picture of how your baby has slept and how often they're waking. And it's actually not too far off from how Snoo laid theirs out, if you're not already familiar with their interface, which, you know, I kind of presume that was an intentional design move by Cradlewise. But some parents find this kind of information helpful to help build a routine, better sleep habits, and through all three of my kids, I've used some form of sleep tracking data, whether that was through Nanit or Miku. I personally like that stuff. And if you're trying to invest in a smart sleep solution system, I would assume that that's kind of your flavor as well. But again, that might not be for everybody, so keep that in mind. Now, one thing I'll note is that some parents also want vitals tracking, like heart rate monitoring, oxygen monitoring, all that kind of stuff, but that's not something that you're gonna have access to with Cradlewise, so bear that in mind when you are shopping. Now, the design itself, it's sleek, modern, minimalistic aesthetic. It's probably gonna fit with most nursery styles that are out there. It's not lightweight and portable though. You can probably move it from room to room if you need, but it's not something that I would envision you doing often unless you are going from master bedroom to the baby's nursery once it's time to make that transition. And the good thing about the transition is even though the location changes, the sleep surfaces, that all stays the same, and that's pretty nice. Now, the crib, you notice it doesn't have slats. Instead, it's wrapped with a lightweight mesh fabric. Now, up to this point, it's held up pretty well for us, but as your baby gets older and possibly more aggressive by scratching and chewing at the sides, there could potentially be an issue, but I can't speak directly to the longevity of that just yet. Up to now, it's held up just fine. I will note that if you have a cat or a dog, do your best not to let them claw at this because they will definitely mess it up. Now, that said, this crib was meant to last quite a bit longer than Snoo, and that's one of the big differentiators that you're gonna find here. Snoo was designed for babies up to 6 months or 25 pounds. Cradlewise comes with a bassinet support that you can assemble to keep the floor raised for newborns, but can also be dropped down to function as a crib, which you've been seeing for a majority of this video. So it has that dual capability of being a bassinet and a crib, while Snoo is limited to just being a bassinet. It has a much more limited lifespan. With Cradlewise, you can get about 2 years of usage, assuming that you don't have big kids who could potentially outgrow it sooner, but up to 2 years. Some other differences to note between the two, between Snoo and Cradlewise. Cradlewise is gonna cost around $2,000, while Snoo runs for around $1,700. But most parents are gonna opt to rent it at $159 a month, plus the $100 cleaning and reconditioning fee that they have. So if you're using it for the full 6 months, you're looking at around $1,200 in rental of the Snoo. So $2,000 for 2 years or $1,200 for 6 months. That's pretty much what you're looking at. Snoo has a 30-day trial. Cradlewise has a 100-night trial. So really, if it doesn't work out for you, you can technically send it back at no risk. So that's definitely a plus. Like I mentioned, they both have different soothing motions. I don't see the bouncing of Cradlewise to be, superior or inferior to the swaying motion of Snoo, but I would say that based on my experience, it functions on par. It functions nicely. The thing that you can't deny though is altogether, Snoo has logged somewhere near like 100 million sleep hours. So they have a proven track record with regards to sleep efficacy. It's definitely a product that works nicely in most cases. Parents have been happy with it for years. Now, one assurance that parents do enjoy is how it's also able to keep babies on their back with their built-in swaddle, which Cradlewise does lack. Now, note that you typically stop swaddling around that 8-week mark or when the baby starts to roll. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of what Cradlewise is, how it functions, how it sort of stacks up to Snoo. But to answer that final question, which should you go for? One has a track record for mastering one thing very well for a short period of time, while the other handles multiple use cases decently for a longer period of time. They have different strengths that offset each other. Now, as I've said before, on this channel, I personally don't think that you really need smart bassinets or cribs at all. But there's no doubt that these offer very good value, that they're really good products to help alleviate a lot of stress. So if I'm gonna choose one, I'm primarily gonna base my decision off of longevity. If I'm expecting my first baby and definitely plan on having 1 or 2 more down the line, I think Cradlewise is probably gonna offer me more value by being able to serve multiple purposes and delivering on years of usage. We'd spend like $2,000 on the Cradlewise, then around the 2-year mark, we transitioned them to a twin size floor bed, which you can find on Wayfair for like $200, plus the cost of a mattress and another monitor if you still want eyes and ears on the baby, or not the baby, your toddler at that time. Now, this is all assuming that your kid isn't bigger than average, right? And then won't size out before that 24-month mark, which could very well be the case. Now, if this was baby number 2 or 3, you're not planning on having any more, you likely already have a crib and a mattress set up from your older kids, and you're definitely in the market for some kind of smart tech because babies 1 and 2 are way more difficult with regards to sleep in their traditional bassinet setup. You're basically in the same stage of life as me, right? Baby number 3, probably not planning on having any more. For this kind of person, this kind of avatar that we just set up, in that case, I would probably lean more towards Snoo. All of our kids transition out of bassinets around 4-month, 5-month max. So we'd be done with everything that Snoo had to offer, and then we'd be transitioning them to a traditional crib and smart monitor setup from Miku that we had left over from our other kids. So it'd be a really easy, smooth transition without having to reinvest in anything. Now, if you are on baby number 1 and you do opt for Snoo, technically it's kind of gonna net out around the same price as Cradlewise in the end, because once you're done with Snoo, you're gonna have to reinvest in a crib, and then in most cases some sort of a monitor setup, which that can run a few $100s. So that plus the $1,200 for 6 months of Snoo is probably gonna net out around the same price as Cradlewise. Honestly, I don't know if what I said is actually helpful. I hope it was, but at the end of the day, I think that these are both phenomenal products, and it's hard to definitively say that one is exponentially better than the other. One isn't winning this race at the moment because they're very different. They just really smart options, just different tactics. Now, like I mentioned, if I had to choose one, I think I'd lean Snoo a little bit if I had to choose. There are probably still a bunch of things that you might want to know regarding like impact on self-soothing and a bunch of other things, which would extend this video another 15 minutes or so, which I just can't do. So if you have any further questions, leave a comment down below. I'll do my best to answer them. For now, that's where I leave you. Thank you for watching this video. Hit that like button if you found this video helpful. God bless, and we'll catch you later. Peace.